State lawmakers springing into action as Florida's legislative session begins. Already there are proposals concerning abortion, guns, schools, and immigration. We'll look at the hot-button issues on the table in Tallahassee. We're also reviewing the only televised debate between candidates for mayor in Jacksonville. Political analyst Rick Mullaney joins us. Plus, the leader of a local health tech company now part of the Florida Chamber. We'll speak with Russ Thomas about the industry and the way his company has invested in education on This Week in Jacksonville. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are beginning in the world of business, where a local leader has been named to the board of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. So Russ Thomas, Chief Executive Officer at Availity. Let's start with your work at Availity and maybe tell us about the company, the impact on the region, even, I guess, in the state when it comes to healthcare and technology.
Yeah, thanks, Kent. So thanks for having me here today. We'll go even broader than that. Availity is a national platform. So great Florida story. The company was founded right here in Jacksonville back in 2001 by two innovative health plans who started it, Florida Blue and Humana. Started in Florida, and from those humble beginnings have grown into what today is the largest network in the entire country. So just to give you some context, over the course of the year this year, we will connect over 2 million providers of healthcare services, so physicians, hospitals, health systems, to every health plan in the country. We'll transact roughly 13 billion transactions through our network.
Wow.
And if you look at the total economic input through our network, you'd call it invoices in any other sector of the economy. In healthcare, we call it claims billed. Over $2.5 trillion of claims billed through our network.
So is it focused kind of exclusively on that claims build, or is it also the communication that I do with a physician or how they talk to each other, any of that?
So it's really provider to health plan. So it's really all of the communications, great question. It's all the communications that take place between a health plan and a provider. So whether it's a claim or you walk into your doctor's office confirming that you have eligibility and what are your benefits and what do you owe as a copay that day.
Pretty important as a
all
pricer.
the way through, clinical data, what's going on with you, right? So they can have an idea of what they're dealing with before you walk in.
So you mentioned scope. Okay, so national. What about here in Jacksonville? How many folks are employed? And how big is the company?
Again, started here in Jacksonville. Before COVID, if you just sort of look at the daily office census, right, we were 500 people in the office every day was about the average. We're 1,200 people total, give or take, around the country. Today, there are a lot fewer in the office every day. We've really become a virtual company since COVID, but yeah, we still employ well over 500 people here in the local market. This is home.
One of the reasons I reached out was this announcement early this year that you've been selected to be on the board of directors for the Florida Chamber of Commerce. So tell me about the impact you see making through the Florida Chamber.
Yeah, so let's talk about how I got there, right? I came there through the healthcare route. So I've been privileged to chair the Florida Chamber Healthcare Partnership for the last couple of years. And what I found there is a very innovative, thoughtful group of business leaders, both in healthcare and then just large employers around the state who have come together to say, what can we do to create a better healthcare system? How can we create transparency, turn it into a real sort of clear economy, if you will, for healthcare? And from that experience, I was invited to join the board recently and accepted that invitation. So really sort of healthcare centric. It's a passion of mine to build a better healthcare system, and I'm thrilled to be able to do it at the level of the chamber and provide some guidance there.
So I read that the chairman of the board says free enterprise isn't free, and that the goal is to drive Florida to a top 10 global economy by 2030. That's bold.
It's a big goal.
In 7 years, how can that happen?
Well, I think we're well on the way, right? You've got 1,000 net new people moving to Florida every day. I think they were all on 95 North on the way here this afternoon, but 1,000 net new every day coming to Florida. To me, it's as much about the size of the economy as the type of the economy that we're building here. So that's where I'm focused, right? I'm a technology guy. I really believe in tech as a way both to create better lives for people, whether it's in healthcare or other sectors, and also to build a great economy around healthcare. I think Florida can be a technology leader across multiple disciplines and multiple sectors of the economy, healthcare, fintech, all great opportunities for us as a state to really step up and show some leadership.
This is something where we've even heard recently in Jacksonville, the University of Florida, saying, hey, if we have a satellite campus, maybe it would focus on fintech or something.
Absolutely,
like that.
yes.
That's helpful to what Availity wants to do?
So it's a great question. I think for us, it's interesting, Kent. Since COVID, we have hired people. We hire people all over the country, right? It's less about where you work now than how you work and talent and what are you capable of. I think that's probably good for Florida because I think we have a great place to live here, right? So it's less about sort of attracting people to move and more about identifying great talent in this market. That's how we will continue to grow our footprint in Florida. And so, yeah, partnerships with the University of Florida. We as Availity have a great partnership with Jacksonville University, where I've had the opportunity to serve on the board. And that's a partnership to drive more engagement and more, if you will, automation and efficiency with nurses, right? To really help nurses practice at the top of their degree. So just both great examples of how you can leverage technology for a stronger economy.
I want to talk a little bit, we got about 2 minutes left, but I want to talk, some companies dive in more than others when it comes to giving back in the communities. Tell me about your view on this program beyond school walls. I know your company gives some scholarships, and we got some video here, but tell me about this program. It's really
something I'm very proud of because it wasn't my decision, it was a company decision. So for years, Availity has participated in Big Brothers, Big Sisters, now Beyond School Walls program, where my colleagues have mentored kids over at Rybalt. We started in the middle school and followed many of these kids all the way through high school. Now our kids are graduating. So we awarded 11 scholarships recently, total about $50,000 of scholarships to our kids to help support them in college, including my mentee, a phenomenal young man, Cheyenne Williams, who has a number of colleges to choose from. I'm trying to get him to my alma mater. He's been accepted at Virginia Tech.
That's what a mentor does.
Hey, what a mentor does, right? I'm twisting his arm a little bit. So, no, look, you got to give back, right? I think it's important culturally to us as a company. What I have found, Kent, over and over again is that we get more out of it than the kids do or than the recipients do. What it does for us culturally and to bring us together as associates outside of the workplace for a really important cause is just fantastic. So I love it. It's something that we're, as a company, committed to. We have our own foundation that we've created now, and we will continue to give back to this and other communities where we live and work.
Yeah, it sure seems like it should be the model of each of our companies that are doing so well in the region, saying, and I'm not just about making money, let me help out in the community. So I appreciate showing the example there. Russ, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Max. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Ken.
So, early voting is underway and Election Day is coming soon. Political analyst Rick Mullaney joins me as we look at what happened in the only televised debate among 7 candidates for mayor in Jacksonville. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
It's been a big week in the run for elected office in Duval County. Early voting began, and there are now 9 days until the election where voters choose a new mayor. News4JAX political analyst Rick Mullaney is joining us. Rick, Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, News4JAX. We co-hosted this mayoral debate this week. All right, so all the candidates who are going to be on the ballot were there. Let's just start broadly. Why was this important?
Ken, I think this debate was particularly important this year. More money has been raised for this mayoral race than any in the history of our city. And more money has been spent on negative campaigning and personal attacks than any campaign in the history of our city for the mayoral race. And I think there was a desire on the part of the public to hear from all the candidates on the issues and actually be introduced to those candidates. The election's less than 2 weeks away, and this was a debate for 1 hour with all 7 candidates on the ballot, a chance to introduce them to the public, to address issues. And I think one of the biggest takeaways was that this was a civil debate. It was respectful, it was constructive. In fact, I think the candidates maybe played it a little bit safe. They were concerned about that. But it was important as part of matter of public discussion to get all 7 candidates running for mayor, because remember this, come July 1, whoever's elected mayor is going to play a leading role in shaping the future of Jacksonville and the region because of our strong mayor form of government and because of consolidated government. This is an important race.
So let's talk about, we're not calling winners or losers in this, but tell me, why was this important?
Well, I think that what the public was hungry for was policy differences, background differences. Do you have a grasp of the issues? And I think as they took a look at each of these candidates, there's a lot of undecided voters out there. Many were turning in, a lot of undecided voters. So this debate, I think, was particularly important for that reason, too. You think you know all the candidates because we follow them, but truly, many people do not know these candidates. And for those who are underfunded, for example, for Al Ferraro, great opportunity to raise his profile. For Audrey Gibson, maybe not as much. Donna Deegan may not have as much funding, but certainly her profile is much higher, and she performed very well, as she always does in these debates. Others are better funded. So an important debate to hear for the people of Jacksonville, to see the candidates, to hear about their backgrounds, to see how their grasp they have of the issues, what their vision is, what their policies are. Not a lot of policy clashes in this debate, but an important debate.
Yeah, so 4 Republicans, 2 Democrats, no party-affiliated candidate. A lot of people are kind of on the, oh, why are you going to have all 7, especially when underfunded or don't poll as high or what have you. Still, every single person on the stage really contributed to that part of the conversation and what the ideas are on these issues.
They really did, Kent, and you point out something that is challenging, and you're not asking for a compliment, but I'm going to give you one anyway. I think it's challenging with 7 candidates in 60 minutes to cover substantive issues and to do it in depth, and you did it as well as anybody could, but I thought all 7 did contribute, and I actually think all 7 did very well. This was not a debate in which someone broke out from the pack. This is not a debate in which somebody made a major mistake. This debate was in sharp contrast to the negative campaigning we've seen. The candidates were being careful, but they were introducing themselves to the public. They were talking about the issues, and I thought it was important that they do that. But all 7 of them contributed in their own way.
I want to show you some of the video, and this isn't necessarily what you saw from the camera's view. This is almost a behind the scenes of what was going on at the debate here. But at the Terry Concert Hall, and Rick, you and I have talked about this, this was the 12th debate that the Public Policy Institute and News 4 Jax, we partnered on over the last several years. 8 years? 10 years?
Since 2015, we've 12 on campus, yes.
So you just brought up 7 candidates, 1 hour for this debate. That meant squeezing down the topics to those that we thought were the very most important for the candidates to discuss. We thought those were the most important questions. What do you think were the most important answers when it came to what we saw?
Well, I thought you did a great job in asking the questions. I thought the candidates themselves dodged some of it, which is understandable. In looking at these issues, come July 1 with the new mayor, certainly one of the big questions is going to be, what about a potential billion-dollar deal with the Jaguars? The largest public-private transaction really deal in the history of our city is looming. And one of the answers you got was the candidates were uniform in that they would not raise property taxes to fund it, but they were also pretty silent on whether or not they were willing to fund up to $500 million, which is about half of that $1 billion for the stadium renovation. It was important that all of them expressed their support for the Jaguars, but that they're going to have to negotiate this deal. When it came to public safety, Al Ferraro in particular talked about putting 250 more police officers on the street. Each of the candidates really talked about putting more police on the street. There was a general support, of course, for river access and for the buildup of our river. But overall, you didn't see a lot of policy clashes. In fact, Kent, we had structured the debate so that you could give rebuttal time if somebody else was mentioned, and you never really had to do that. So I think this is a debate where you learned about the candidates, learned about their grasp of the issues, but you did not see a lot of differences in the candidates in terms of policy issues. But I will say this. I think each of the candidates in their own way advanced their own cause. Donna Deegan performed very well. Audrey Gibson is well known because of her time in the legislature, but is not well known in Jacksonville. I think Leanna Cumber made a good decision to be positive, to talk about her background, her expertise. Daniel Davis played to his strength, which is his background in terms of city council, Florida legislature, as well as CEO of the chamber. And Al Ferraro may have really helped his cause in talking about public safety and coming across in such a genuine way. Each of the candidates in their own way, I thought, advanced their cause.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We know, because we measure these things as a TV station, we know more people were watching that hour-long debate than watching anything else on TV in Jacksonville. Again, that's 1 hour, but it shows the level of interest for people as we head toward what happens March 21st. All right, so I'm asking Rick to stay with us. I'm asking you to stay with us as well. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to state politics. The legislature has some weighty topics on the table, and we'll discuss some of those next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
News from Jack's political analyst Rick Mullaney is with us. So in this segment, Rick, let's look west of Jacksonville. Let's go to the state capitol because the 60-day legislative session is underway. Strong majorities for Republicans both in the House and the Senate. Some notable bills moving through this process already. So let's talk a little bit about this. It started with the governor giving his state of the state speech, and it seems like the Republican governor's priorities, those are going to hit the top of the agenda for these lawmakers, right?
Kent, they clearly are. And if you look to the governor's state of the state address and also look to his inaugural back in January, you can see that he's got his eye on a much bigger picture. So for this legislative session, one of the most important in the history of Florida in many ways, the eyes of the nation are on Governor DeSantis, and they're on Florida, and they're on this session. And Governor DeSantis, quite frankly, has his eye on a bigger stage. He released his new book. He's planning trips to some of the early primary states, and he's talking in big terms in terms of vision and policy for Florida as a model, as he says, for the rest of the country, or if he says even beyond that. So in this session, take a look at those issues that are positioning the governor for a run for the presidency. It's no surprise. Everyone expects that he's going to run, announcing it after the legislative session is over. And so when he does, this is, you mentioned, a Republican-controlled legislature, the most in history. In the House, of the 120 members, 84 are Republicans. Of the 40 in the Senate, 28 are Republicans. What does that mean? It means that Governor DeSantis is going to be able to have his agenda through this session, which will position him for the future.
For the record, when Kent Justice and any other journalist ask the governor, are you running for president? He says, I'm the governor right now. And we do expect, however, everything points toward after the legislative session, maybe in May or June, that he might make this announcement to run for president.
Ken, I think that's the savvy answer to give you, and I think he's handling this right when it comes to Donald Trump. He is not talking about Donald Trump directly. He's ignoring Donald Trump, and I think he's being smart about he doesn't have the pressure of having to announce now. He had a resounding win in the fall, winning by almost 20 points, the most in 40 years in Florida. Florida went deep red in the legislature, in Congress, in local elections, and in his race. So he does have the luxury of not having to announce now. It can come this summer after the session. He also has the luxury of not having to engage with Donald Trump directly. But everyone knows it's coming. He's preparing himself for it. And this substantive agenda will reflect his priorities.
Let's talk about some of the things that are on the agenda. Legislation has been introduced in Florida's House and Senate that would make performing an abortion after 6 weeks a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So some limited exceptions there for medical emergencies, rape, incest, and when the fetus isn't viable. But this measure also seeks to get government entities and educational institutions to keep them from getting public money to help people financially travel out of state to get a procedure like that. So abortion seems like, I mean, we've seen it across the country. So many states are enacting these. Florida did a 15-week abortion ban. This takes it the next level. It seems like this might be risky territory.
Ken, I think it is. And I think this is a really big issue. It's a big issue for Republicans. In the midterm elections last fall, I believe the abortion issue was one of those issues that contributed to the Democrats overperforming and the Republicans underperforming. And Republicans have yet to find their way on the abortion issue. In this legislative session, this move to 6 weeks did not come from Governor DeSantis, actually. It appears it's come from legislators, although he signaled that he will sign the bill. Florida is unique in that the Florida Constitution has a right to privacy within it. The Florida Supreme Court is going to come up with a ruling soon, not before the end of the session most likely, but is going to come out with a ruling as to whether or not the right to privacy contains a right to abortion within it. This is risky grounds for Republicans. It may play well to the base, it clearly does. However, in a general election, this is a very big issue that I expect Democrats to seize on. I think Governor DeSantis has been very careful with this issue. You have not seen him out front on this issue. Last year, Florida passed a statute making it 15 weeks. He has not been one pushing it for 6, but that's where the legislature is going. And he said he will sign the bill if it comes to his desk.
At least 2 other things that maybe we can squeeze in here. This week, the Senate panel moved Florida a step closer to allowing people to carry concealed weapons, firearms, without licenses. So some people call this constitutional carry. How does this play out here in the state of Florida?
You know, in some ways, you're not satisfying anybody here because those pro-gun advocates, they want to have open display, and it doesn't go that far. Those who are concerned about guns and some of the issues that we've had in Florida thinks it goes too far. But certainly from a Second Amendment standpoint, with majority Republicans in the legislature, this has a very good chance of passing, and it is a priority for many in the Florida legislature.
There's already something that would reduce or increase the age of people being able to purchase firearms to 21 instead of 18. Let's move past that for a moment. Things going on with schools and education, including vouchers for public money to go to students to go to private schools. How does that work?
This is also a priority for Paul Renner, the Speaker of the House, has talked about. Right now you have vouchers, which are a payment that goes with the student. So if a student goes from a public school to a private school, they get to take it with them. But there are limitations on who can do it. By that I mean income limitations and other limitations. And those in the public schools are concerned because they believe it affects funding. What Paul Renner wants to do, what some of the Republicans in the legislature want to do, is expand vouchers beyond low income to make it more universal. And that's in the name of competition and choice. The critics believe that that takes money away from public school funding. They also believe it could segregate schools, public and private, because even with those vouchers, poorer people can't afford the whole ticket to go to private schools. So vouchers are controversial with Republicans and Democrats, but in this Republican legislature, look to see an expansion of vouchers this session.
Yeah. So there are other topics that are being under consideration for the Senate and the House, and how this is different is because, as you mentioned, this supermajority of Republicans there, some of those things might sail through instead of getting knocked off onto the side. Rick, I appreciate your insights here, and I want to remind each of you, election is soon here in the city of Jacksonville. Early voting is underway, and if you're still deciding, go online and rewatch the debate from this week. You can also go to our voters guide. It is terrific, and it's got as many of the candidates as we get to respond. You'll see your answers to important questions there. This Week in Jacksonville, it airs each Sunday morning at this time. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4, the CW17, and online at news4jax.com. We're streaming on News4Jax Plus.
See why every day more people are choosing News4Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.